course, when DeepMind opened up their first international office in Alberta, everyone in the world started paying attention. And about that same time, as Randy mentioned, that the DeepMind also beat Lee Sedol, the world champion in the game Go. And it was interesting, though, is that this picture is, if you're a Netflix person, there's a fantastic documentary called AlphaGo. This is taken from that, and there's Lee Sedol on the right, and the person on the left is Aja Wang, who was prominently featured along with David Silver in the documentary. They're both U of A grads. And then when one thing Randy didn't mention when he talked about his work, they actually developed an AI that can pass the Japanese bar exam. Really remarkable stuff. So I started paying attention to this along with a number of other people. And I was like, how can we make money on this? It's basically what we were trying to say. And Randy also talked about this slide, and this again was something that really struck me. And this just actually came, it's slightly different than Randy's because I think his might be a couple months old. Mine's just from last week. So you can go to csrankings.org and you can select on the institutions in the geographic location, so in the world. And for the last 20 years, you can click on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the U of A is number 3 in the world. But one of the things that I found really striking is this number here. So this is the number of people in the faculty. So not only are they number 3 in the world in terms of the count, the research output, it was only done by literally a fraction of the scientists and the researchers there. So it's not only the quality or the quantity of research, it's also the quality of research. So we realized that we had something very strong at the University of Alberta.
You know that Edmonton is cold in the winter, so we just stay inside and work.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
Jessica. That's exactly right. So last year, myself and a number of people in the business community, and then also in academia and the university, and also the economic development group said, well, how can we take advantage of this research foundation and create a business plan, or how do we create a business strategy? So we put together a plan. We presented it to the government, and we were really pleased to announce that back in February we had a $100 million investment from the government of Alberta, kind of build out the business side of the infrastructure. Unfortunately, we had a change of government, so there was an election in April. We don't know exactly the status of the plan, but regardless, as a community, we're still firing away on it. And really the plan has got, I won't get into this in details, but it's 5 major things. We realize we have to keep investing in AMII and the University of Alberta. Randy pointed out that Tsinghua University is shooting up the ranks. We have to keep investing if we want to stay ahead. The talent piece is obviously very important. There was an article in the I think New York Times or the Wall Street Journal this morning saying that 80% of the cost of AI projects relates to data preparation. So it's the data wrangling skill set. So we're building out those skills in addition to what's coming out of the University of Alberta. Infrastructure, access to open data, access to capital, all those things in terms of business building. Industry solutions, which I'll talk about in a second, and then market presence, is how do we work together as a community to get the word out about Edmonton and Alberta to other parts of the world, and that's why we're here today, and that's why Randy and I had a trip to Asia last year. And I should point out we went to Taipei, Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Seoul. And it wasn't because of me, it was because of Randy, but there was sellout audiences. It was unbelievable. Every place we went was literally packed with people. And it really struck me, oh my God, we're really onto something here in terms of what we have. So we're really trying to build up our profile internationally outside of Canada. So how are we doing? This is a slide that shows the organizations that have a research presence in Edmonton. So it's a combination of, we talked about DeepMind, Huawei, Borealis AI, which is the Royal Bank of Canada, their AI group. They all have research labs set up in Edmonton. The one in the bottom right-hand corner, Minds Lab, is Korea's largest AI company or startup company. Just raised $25 million a few weeks ago. They just opened up a lab in Edmonton about a month ago. So they're setting up shop here. Many of the other large organizations, such as Amazon or Google as a whole or Microsoft, all have research collaborations at the University of Alberta. So AMII is the not-for-profit organization, the U of A is the academic institution. But also on top of that, I think it's really important to note that LTML, which is a startup company in Edmonton, ATB Financial, which is a big bank and a credit union, those organizations individually have each put in $1 million each into the University of Alberta to fund research related to AI, the application of research. So we feel this is very important to get this talent to the city, located there, and it's for what Randy pointed out, we've got all these opportunities to commercialize that research. On the startup side, there's a lot of companies that are focused on AI, as there are in many parts of the world. This is just a cross section of what's happening in Edmonton, and I think I updated this a few weeks ago, and it's already out of date. A lot of things going on, not only the actual AI startups that are like AMII that's developing some AI platforms, but there's another logo on here, a company called PCL, which is Canada's largest general contractor. They're a $8 or $9 billion company. They're developing AI applications in this construction company overall. So it's small companies, but also well-established companies, headquartered in Edmonton, that are using AI, and their businesses are developing AI applications. Yes?
Before you keep going, on your list there, just for reference for everybody here, so Scope AR in the middle there, they actually, they have their manufacturing and they have their offices in Edmonton, but they actually have an office down here in San Francisco as well. And they have been growing their business out here, but they actually keep their talent and they keep their R&D and everything in Edmonton, just because the cost of doing business is extraordinarily different in Edmonton than it is in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But they also have a lot easier time with talent retention because people aren't moving around as much. We find when people come to Alberta, whether they're in Edmonton or whether in Calgary, wherever, they like it and they stay and they don't want to move around. So your talent stays and you can develop them.
Yeah, and it's true. And Scope actually, they just raised a $9.7 million US, 13 million Canadian Series A round. So Scott Montgomery is the CEO, is based here in the Valley. But just these are all the financings that have happened just in the last 4 to 5 months in Edmonton. So this is kind of the flywheel of things that are happening. I should point out, when I talked at the beginning that myself and a couple of other individuals were kind of looking for opportunities related to AI. One of them was Corey Jansen, who founded AMII. This company's only probably 15 months old. And the other person was Aaron Flynn, who ran BioWare, now runs North America for Improbable. They've both gone from 0 to 50 employees in the last year. And I've gone from 1 employee to 1 employee in the last year, so I have some catching up to do with those guys. But we're seeing some real momentum in these different areas. They're all hiring, they're all investing, and one reason why, is to what Christy said, is they can attract talent in Edmonton, and it's actually much more cost effective to do it there than it is in other parts of the world. So when Randy and I first talked about how do we translate the AI research into companies, we had some really good conversations about what do you actually have to do? How do you build a successful AI company? And we were just joking this morning is that if you talk to the snake oil salesman, we just take this magic AI dust and you sprinkle it on things and it makes things happen. And we were thinking this morning over coffee, Randy, we're going to get a little, like those little sugar packages or a pixie stick and put Randy's name on it and sell it to people as the magic AI dust. But the reality is, if you want to create a successful AI company, you really need 4 things. You need the technical talent and IP, and we have that in spades at the University of Alberta coming out of AMII. You of course need the product development and business skills, like how are you going to translate that technology into a product? People don't buy technologies, buy products, so there's a different skill set there. But really the last 2 areas are very critical. One is the domain expertise, which Randy talked about, and of course the data. You need to have access to data, and as the saying goes, the algorithms, the jet engine, the data is the fuel. So where does that data come from? And if you can put those pieces together, I can pretty much guarantee you that if you're going after a significant market, you will be able to attract capital. So in Alberta, what we're doing is we realize in Edmonton, we're not a big city, we're 1.3 million people. We're not Silicon Valley, we're not Beijing. And we realize we have to pick our spots. So really what we're trying to focus on as a community is where do we have the domain expertise and where do we have the data? So these are just areas that we're actually very strong. And to give you an idea of some of the things that I'm working on, and I use this personally as a bit of a filter looking for business opportunities. I'll talk about engineering and construction in a second, and health. But financial services and insurance, we have, not many people realize, we have the 2nd largest concentration of banks in Edmonton in all of Canada. We have a really strong energy and utilities area, transportation logistics. We're just north of Calgary. Calgary is really the energy hub, a huge amount of data related to energy. And we see that these are the areas that we have thousands of employees, and we've got a tremendous amount of expertise and data. So those are the areas that we're really trying to focus on in terms of building AI into established industry sectors. So just to focus down into a couple, on the architecture, engineering, and construction, or AEC, it's a $1 trillion industry worldwide. And if you look at our industry leaders in Edmonton, so Clark Builders, PCL, Dialogue, Williams, Stantec, Ledcor, they're all headquartered in Edmonton. They generate about $15 billion in annual revenues, thousands of employees, a lot of great expertise. So now we're starting to see some things happening. Sirius Lab or Scope AR is doing some construction applications. Sirius Labs is doing some VR applications related to construction. And AltaML, which I mentioned, and PCL, which is Canada's largest contractor, they are doing joint projects of developing AI applications on a construction site. And the one thing I found really interesting, I was in Japan a couple months ago in March, and I met with a Japanese construction company that I think is about 3 times the size of PCL. And I asked one of their leaders there, I said, what are you doing related to AI and construction? He said, oh, well, we have a contract to shut down the Fukushima nuclear power plant, and we can't send in humans there, we got to send in robots. We have issues with productivity, we've got issues with scheduling, and on and on and on. And it's the exact same conversation I had with the CEO of a $1 billion construction company in Canada. So we know that if we develop applications in the space, there's international applications around the world. We've got Antonio here from Health City, but this has been, I'm finding some really interesting AI applications. We know what they are in health. There's a number of startups happening. Health City's playing a key role of linking people together. But the other thing we discovered is that in Alberta, we have 4.3 million people, and we have one health region. So we have access through one health region, the records for 4.3 million people. And if we can figure out the regulatory and the privacy and all those different issues, we've got an incredibly diverse, racially diverse data set there that is really unparalleled in many parts of the world. So in China, you may have access to hundreds of millions of dollars of patient data. It's not racially diverse, it's very homogeneous. And in Alberta, we have a very multicultural population base. So all of a sudden, we're realizing we have some really strong potential applications in that area, and there's a number of startups that are working there. And the University of Alberta is, I think it's mentioned a few times, is very, very strong in the medical research side of things. So we're seeing those applications manifest themselves with the intersection of AI creating new applications. So a lot of things happening there. So really, to sum up, what we're trying to do is create within the Edmonton region an AI industry. And if you kind of look at how AI in the past, the application of any new technology, if it's the internet or AI, and how it kind of progresses from research to product development, you start with that fundamental research, you kind of move into applied research, the things that AMII is doing, and then, which generally happens in academia and in large corporate labs. Then you go through this development process where you start actually developing specific applications for that AI, and then it gets commercialized and it's brought to market in terms of products and new companies. And that's done through platform companies, or it's just done through corporate operations. And the companies that have done that successfully today are really the FANGs. It's the Facebooks, Amazons, the Googles, etc., and the BATs in Asia, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. And really why they've been successful is they've got a lot of money to get the expertise, but they have a huge amount of data. They all have this generating all this consumer data internally, and it's given them the head start in the AI application. So really what we've realized now is that the AI or applications are becoming more mainstream, the products or the platforms are being developed, and now we see opportunities within individual industries. And we realize, and what we're really trying to do as a community, is really trying to replicate what goes on in large corporations, but within a region. So we have the University of Alberta, we've got AMII, we've got the corporate labs that are setting up there, but we're building up this innovation ecosystem of AI companies and community that can actually commercialize that work. And the reason I feel very strongly about this and why I'm here doing this, I see it's the tide that lifts all boats. It's going to create deal flow for myself and my fellow investors. But it also creates a bit of critical mass in the community of different skill sets. And we provide an opportunity for companies to locate in Edmonton, and we've got a number of advantages, which I'll point out in a second. So why Edmonton? Just the obligatory shots. Edmonton's about 1 million people. We've really got it's a great place to live, both summer and winter. This slide was really popular in Asia because it's a slide from, there was a Guinness World Record attempt to have the largest snowball fight in the world, and which we were successful. However, Saskatoon or someone else beat us, and so we have to have another one so we can win it again. So you get these, it's a lot of fun in the wintertime as well.
It won't be scheduled for August.
No, it won't be scheduled for August. Edmonton's been,
It's not that cold.
No,
We
it's
have, like,
not.
amazing outdoor kind of winter lifestyle. and-
It's a dry cool.
It is warmer there today than it is here.
It's like 30 or 32 Celsius in Edmonton today, so yeah, 20 degrees warmer than here. A really growing innovation community, and this might be a bit hard to read. This is actually my favorite slide because it says, and you can read it, it says, take a risk. It's the most Edmonton thing you can do. And it's actually not Photoshop. It's actually on the side of a 12-story building in downtown Edmonton. And we've got this incredible legacy of people making money in natural resource extraction, if it's oil and gas or agriculture or forestry. And I'm convinced if all those leaders were 22-year-olds today, they wouldn't be investing in construction, they'd be investing in AI. So we've got a really strong risk-taking environment in Edmonton. And I was having a conversation with a few people, like, what is quality of life, and all sorts. San Francisco is such an amazing place in terms of quality of life, as many cities do. And like, how do you quantify it? And you can start getting into some of the stats. There was a survey of that the mayor talked about recently, is that Edmonton is the best place in Canada for youth to work. And so that's why we're attracting a lot of people moving to the community. It's tops in terms of housing affordability, and I know that's an issue here. And of course, we have Randy's institution, AMII, the U of A, which is absolutely top 3 in the world. And I ran across a stat that in the computing science department at the U of A, they graduated about 140 undergrads and about 60 graduate students. And I didn't know if that was a lot or a little, but I also found out that Carnegie Mellon, the number 1 on that, this is just undergrads, they have 175. So it's actually really comparable. And it's a lot of this talent, it's really focusing in on AI. The other funny story, and I don't think it was Randy, it was someone else who told me on campus, is that the reinforcement learning area is so popular in particular because of Richard Sutton and Randy's colleagues. Is a fellow didn't get in, young guy, applied for his PhD, didn't get in, and he asked him, so what are you going to do? He goes, well, I got in at my safety school, so I'm going to do okay. Well, what's your safety school? Stanford. Stanford was the safety school over the U of A, which I thought was funny. But also Edmonton's, we've got over 90,000 post-secondary students. So we talk about the skills, obviously, at the University of Alberta, but we have NAIT, which is our largest polytechnic in Canada. So you think about the data wrangling skills, all those other skill sets you need to build a company. We have those as well. So I just want to finish on one story that a friend of mine, a guy that he wants to start a startup, and I may be his partner and investor in it. And he emigrated to Canada from Asia a number of years ago. He took his PhD in reinforcement learning at the U of A, graduated, had tons of job offers, came down here to the Valley, worked for a very large, prominent company, and then he moved back to Edmonton. And that's when I got to know him. I said, why did you move back to Edmonton? And he goes, well, I moved back to Edmonton because he had to take he took a 40% pay cut to come back to Edmonton. And so he said, love my time in the Valley. I lived in a nice place, but it was a duplex. I got 2 kids. I now live on Saskatchewan Drive, and so Saskatchewan Drive's this beautiful residential thing that overlooks the river valley. Because I got a house that's bigger than my duplex, and I walk my kids to school as opposed to driving them 30 minutes to a private school. They go to public school, which is higher ranked than this public school. Then I walk on to work, and he runs an autonomous vehicle research lab. And so he just said, I took a pay cut. Yeah, it's colder in Edmonton, but my disposable income is up, and I get 2.5 hours of my life back. And so I said, okay, that's how you quantify quality of life. And when I talked to the people, came down on the plane with people from DMind, and they're at about 50 people in Edmonton, and they've repeated the same thing, is that if you're married, you got your young family, you want to buy a house, that's why they're attracting people coming back from London, is you can actually buy a house close to where you work. So we're really excited by that, because we know we can attract people to the city. We know we can no longer have to, like Randy's PhD grads have to leave the city to work. They're really, they can stay in Edmonton. Very last thing I want to say is just actually give a shout out to AMII and to Edmonton Economic Development Corp and to Edmonton Global. We were in Korea last year. We met a company that said, we need an AI strategy and we need to do some AI research. What should we do? So we connected them with EEDC. The person that's not here today is Dalen Breen. So take a photo of this, and if you want any sort of personalized service or introductions to the community, to AMII, or through Edmonton Global, we have our colleagues here. They were able to connect this company not only to the U of A and AMII, but the startup community And then a month ago, they opened up a lab in Edmonton. So they really are able to make things happen. We're a very small, tight-knit community. Because of that, we can make things happen very quickly. So with that, thank you very much. And if there's any questions for Randy or I think we'll be willing to take them.
No, just to Bruce's point about being a small, tight-knit community, I mean, some of the other logos that he had up there, one of them was the Edmonton Airport. And they have actually done like massive amounts of development out at the airport, and they're actually partners with a lot of companies, and they actually support a lot of research and a lot of stuff that goes on out there. Actually, at the airport, they actually have, you know, autonomous test sites at the airport. They have all sorts of things, and they actually, so the community partners in Edmonton are really supportive, and they're really strong.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's
And if you don't-
actually like a major community
It's like 2
advantage in
degrees
Edmonton.
separation from pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, well, thanks, Bruce.